Hello, Miss Terry. How are you?
Well, hi, Debbie. I'm great. It's good to be with
It's
you today.
it's election day. What a fabulous, wonderful day. We couldn't have
It
done this on a
really
better
is.
day than election day.
I'm telling you, there's an
Yeah,
excitement in the air.
there is an excitement in the air. Well, I'm Debbie Saviano, and my guest today is Terry Hasdorff, and this is Let's Talk about Christians and politics. And we thought, what better day than to do this on election day, right? So appreciative of all the people who are here and the fact that they've joined us, and that whether you're live or you're watching the replay, please let us know where you're from. And we have a question. Did you vote early or did you vote in person? Or are you
Mm.
voting in person? So let us know which of those make the case, because it's fascinating. Terry and I were having that conversation before about when you vote. We always vote early because then we don't have to worry about if something happens, you get a flat tire or whatever. That'd be horrific. So anyway, so I'm humbled that we're able to spend this time together. And as I said, whether it's live or you're watching the recording, I always say this every time I do a lot. Time is so precious, and I never want to take up time and not be conscious of how important that is. And so I don't go through all the bios. You're going to love Terry. You're going to love her background and what she does. But at the end, I encourage you to go on LinkedIn and connect with Terry, as well as everyone else who's on here. So if you're on your phone and you go to the event, it says networking. If you click on that, it'll show you everyone who's registered for this event. And so you can just go on and connect and say, hey, I saw you registered for the live with Terry, and then you can connect. I always encourage you to make a note, let them know how and where you saw them. But then that's a great way to connect, expand your audience. So highly encourage you to do the comments and the lives and the comments, the likes and the hearts, etc. Give Terry some love. So as we all know, today is election day. And it's the perfect reminder of the importance of voting. I really do think it's one of the, you never want to say it's the most important, but I do believe it's one of the most important things we do as citizens of this country. And we take it for granted sometimes because we're so accustomed to it. But people today are voting for the House of Representatives, Senate, and in 39 states, they're voting for the governor. So, regardless of political party, we all want everyone to have the same values we have. But the important thing is to be involved. So, we're so excited that you're here. And Terry, I'm so happy that you took some time. So I know you've had a lot of interviews going on because it is election day. And you've had quite the professional background, Terry. I mean, my gosh, your sphere has been so broad. And I've heard you say that God has given you a career path with some unique experiences. So tell us about that. Let the audience know a little bit about your journey and what you've done and how you're here today.
Sure. Well, it really all started, Debbie, when I was in high school. My youth pastor actually convinced me to go on a trip to Russia. It was a exchange program. I was one of 40 student leaders selected from across the state of Alabama, and he also worked with the governor's office, so he was in charge of that trip. And we traveled to 7 different cities across the Soviet Union, and I saw firsthand what communism and socialism does to people. And the hopelessness and the oppression and the lack of resources, food was just overwhelming. And after 3 weeks, 3 very long weeks, when my
Yes.
plane touched back down at John F. Kennedy Airport, I was so grateful to be an American that I literally got down on my hands and knees and kissed the ground. And, I have always remembered that because we take it so for granted how incredible it is that we have a country where we can get involved and we can make a difference. That's why I believe so many of the people there felt so hopeless, because they didn't think that there was anything they could do to change it. So that really created a trajectory for my career. My friend who had set up that trip encouraged me to go intern in Washington. I started interning at the White House and then was asked to stay on. I was in the first Bush White House in the Office of Public Liaison, which is now what is known as the Office of Public Engagement. And then I went on from there to work on Capitol Hill. I worked for the first chief administrative officer for the U.S. House of Representatives under Speaker Newt Gingrich, and did a lot of work with cleaning up a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse. We were draining the swamp before swamp draining was cool, and did a lot that put over $4.4 billion in savings to the taxpayers to date in place, and it's still saving the taxpayers a lot of the reforms that we made on the processes of the House of Representatives. And then worked for Congressman Adderholt, and was the deputy director of the House Republican Conference under J.C. Watts. Eventually went back to Alabama, to my home state, and set up the first Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives, and then did the international side of the President's Faith-Based Initiative under Bush 43. And then went back to Alabama again and ran for Congress in 2020. And boy, did I learn a lot through that experience. I prayed and prayed about it, and I didn't know if I was supposed to win. I just knew I was supposed to run. And when I did, I learned a lot. And then I took over a super PAC after my race ended. And after both of those things were finished, I really felt like God just put it on my heart to write this book, because I realized there were just so many things that people just don't know about politics. And so the book is called Running into the Fire, and it came out September 6th with Charisma. And it's something that I think is really geared towards empowering people and giving them hope about how they can make a difference in politics. So that's kind of a quick recap.
Absolutely. I tell you, I'm thinking about this just to be able to remember everything you've done is huge. I think the biggest takeaway from that, Terry, is the fact the importance of interning. I mean, when you intern, you just never know what's going to happen and what opportunities are available. And so I think it's a great, and a lot of people think interning is for just young people. I know a lot of people who've interned in their 40s and 50s. Actually, even then when people retire, because it gives them something to do with interest. But that was a great avenue for you to get into politics.
I so agree with you. I encourage that so heavily, because even if you never work in government again, just having that knowledge of how the processes work is so invaluable. And working on Capitol Hill is one of the most exciting places you can work. You learn so much, and it's just invaluable knowledge for later in life.
I could only imagine. So we've got Sue Falcone, who's your dear friend, and she said that she made it today. No long lines, but steady all day at her polling place where she is. Debbie Morizik's with us. Good morning, ladies. Hope says that it also says hello and that she's with us. Voted in person. Hope voted in person. Patty, you're right, Patty. Touchy subject today. You're right. But I think one of the things that Terry just shared is the fact that I was using the example Terry and I were talking before we started, and I said I'm sad that people don't learn history today in school so much, because our history is obviously our history and our story of where we came from. The same with civics. It's not about a political party; it's about the political system. And so I think that's the whole point of what we're trying to do here. So Lorenda's already voted as well, so we're happy to have everyone here and to be able to join us today. I think it's really interesting to what you've made the point about getting involved in politics and running for office. What are your suggestions for someone who might want to run for school board, city commissioner, or senator, whatever it is, whatever their role might be? What do you suggest that someone who's just getting involved in politics? Give us your thoughts on that.
Sure. First and foremost, get trained. I think there's 3 elements for success. You need to feel called. If you're a Christian, you want to have that understanding that, this is something that is beyond just yourself. Otherwise, it can become about just you. And so if you're there to serve people and you feel like you're called to do it, then the second thing that you have to do is get trained. And that starts with, maybe it's volunteering on campaigns. Maybe it's going and like doing an internship like we just talked about. Maybe it's working with somebody who becomes like a mentor to you. But getting trained is so critical. And then you have to be supported properly. And that's something that I really talk a lot about as well, in a few of the chapters that I wrote about, because, I think that's where we a lot of times fall down on the job. We don't properly support good candidates. And a lot of people think, oh, I just went out and voted and now I've done my civic duty. And maybe I prayed for that candidate. And I'm like, well, that's wonderful. And those are both incredibly essential things that need to happen. But there's so much more that is needed in order to really get behind people and help them be successful. You need to not only vote at the ballot box, you've got to vote with your wallet, with your time, and with your influence. But because today's election day, the most important thing you can do today is vote. Vote in person, get out and vote.
Exactly. Get out there and vote. We voted early in person, but we voted early. And there was a good little line, even though it was like a week ago, maybe 8 days ago. I can't remember I think it was like last Monday. So obviously 8 days ago, but there was a steady line. And what I find fascinating is every year how much stuff changes, but the informed part, I think, is crucial, Terry. For those of us, those of you on the live today, let us know when you first started voting. What age were you? Were you 18? Were you 30? Whatever. No judgment. I'm just curious as to when people started getting involved. and why, if you wouldn't mind sharing, what was it that made you see the importance of voting? I'm a flower child. I'm from the 60s. And so for us, it was a whole different time. And that was so important. Uh, Again, agree or disagree, there was a lot of political action back then. And so we started voting as soon as we could just because of that. But how does one, Terry, in your opinion, your professional opinion of all the work that you've done, how does one really go about understanding who is running for a particular office, and do they hold the same values? Because people can be really good people and really good candidates, but do they have the values you have? And I think that's one of the things that's so important. And I've had to, in the past, tell people that in very nice ways that I wasn't going to support them because they didn't hold my values. Didn't mean I didn't like them as a person, but they didn't have the same values I had. So how do you go about doing that? How do people make sure that they are understanding what the values are of that person running?
Well, it's really critical to treat it almost like a job interview. You've got to do your homework, and you can't just base it off of who has the most billboards or who you've, maybe seen the most TV commercials from. I tell people, first and foremost, go to the candidate's website, really look at their positions on the issues, and then dig in, do your research with either other like-minded people that may have been in touch with the candidate, may have gotten to know the candidate's staff. If you have time, go do that yourself. Candidates are out there. They're at town hall meetings, they're at campaign events. So I try to really get to know people as much as I possibly can. But a lot of times, if there's a lot of people on a ballot, it's hard to do that. So also looking at voter guides, I know there's several organizations that do that are solid and good. Faith and Freedom, I know has voter guides. iVoter Guide is a good place. Ballotpedia is a great place to look up information on candidates. You can also just call the candidate's campaign headquarters, or sometimes if it's a smaller race, you can talk to the candidate themselves. If you don't have time to go to the events, don't be afraid to just reach out and say, I've got some questions on issues. I'd really like to talk to one of the campaign staffers about such and such. And so, those are all valuable ways. The other thing that I really encourage people to do is, if it's a federal race, especially, look at the FEC reports, look at how they're being supported. You can learn a lot about a candidate by who is giving them money. And you may not like some of the ways that they're being supported. And you have to remember, if they're being given money by certain people or certain organizations, those individuals or organizations are probably going to have a lot of, either influence or communication with that candidate if they're elected. So that all comes into play.
That's an excellent point. Of course, me loving social media, I always tell people go to their social media pages and look, because sometimes people say and do things in a moment that they might not think about it's going to be long term. And just like when I'm talking with college students and universities and things, nothing goes away because someone's going to screenshot that. So I agree with everything you said, and also think social media. David Morazic says, she being raised from birth in a military family, it wasn't, were you going to vote? But you do vote. I mean, and that's such a good point, because military has such a, the president's the commander in chief of all military. And I think coming from a military family, that's a really important thing to share, that is the case. Sue Falcon was saying she's having some trouble with the language hope, and some others are saying it's okay for them, but just, I'm not sure why that's happening, Sue. I hate that, but maybe you can go to your phone or vice versa and see if it'll go better. One of the things that I think, and you briefly mentioned it about the donations, I think people, again, myself included, there's always so much to learn about that, but political donations, walk us through, and your book does an outstanding job of giving the different levels and how that all works. And so, and again, with social media, if I get one text today, I get 20 to 30 texts a day from someone in a different state who's running for office and wants me to donate. And because they buy those lists, right, whatever. And I have supported people just through that, because I knew who they were and I knew what they were standing for. But that's a really simple way that's changed how people do share their resources to help others. But walk us through a little bit, if you would, how's the best way to give, and then shed a little bit of light at the end on super PACs, because I don't think people understand super PACs and what they do. So if you would, that would be so helpful.
Sure. So, the most effective thing that you can do is give money directly to the candidate. Go on their campaign website. You can tell if it's that candidate's website direct by, if it's a federal candidate, especially on the bottom of the website, it's going to say paid for by so-and-so for Congress or so-and-so for Senate. That's something where you make that donation straight to the campaign. There's a federal limit, however, of $2,900, and that's the most that you can give to a candidate that's running for federal office. So that's why in 2010, super PACs were created to allow for several, opportunities for people to come together and support a candidate or oppose a candidate. Super PACs are just like anything else. There's good actors and bad actors. Super PACs are a fairly new creature. They were just created in 2010. The amount of money that they can receive is unlimited. And so basically what that means is if it's in the right hands and it's being run properly, then that can be an incredible force for good to get behind a particular candidate that otherwise would not have the amount of time to raise that amount of money that quickly. Because like when I ran for Congress, I had about 4.5 months. And when you're running against somebody who maybe is pouring millions of dollars into a race, there's no way at $2,900 a pop, you're going to be able to raise large amounts of money. So having a super PAC get behind you can be incredible. But unfortunately, there are a lot of super PACs out there that the money that winds up being given to them sometimes winds up into the pockets of nothing other than political consultants and doesn't really make it to the candidates. And so that's why I have a list of questions in the book that kind of educate donors on questions to ask if you're thinking of giving a large donation, anything over $2,900 to a candidate, and you're giving it to a PAC. These are some things that you want to ask or some things that you want to look at just to be educated and informed before you give.
I think that is such valuable information because people don't understand. It's so overwhelming. And you see the ads. I was watching Barney. I love Barney Business News this morning, and they were interviewing some people in Pennsylvania, and everyone, and they were different political parties, but every one of them said they were so tired of the commercials and the inundation of super PACs and political on their ads on TV. And they all said they should go away with them, which I thought was interesting because it was across party lines. It was just like people are tired of all that and they don't know where that money's going. So again, you have to research. I wanted to go back to something that you mentioned about knowing what people stand for and values and what they voted on, especially if they've already been in office. Our dear friend, who you and I both know and adore, Stacy Shefflin, and most of the people on this live know Stacy. She has done a lot of work with Moms Across America, and they did, and I wish I had it in front of me, but I don't. They did a great book report card on how people voted, and it's amazing how, because people can say anything on TV or anything on an ad or whatever on social media, but what are the facts? And so when you see those report cards, quote unquote, you're able to see, well, wait a minute, you voted this way and this way and this way, so maybe you don't have the same values I had. So I think when you can get those report cards, quote unquote, I think it's really helpful. And again, now with technology and digital space, my gosh, you can get everything that you want to get. Do we have?
I'm so glad you mentioned Moms for America, Debbie, because Kimberly Fletcher is somebody that I really am appreciative of as well. She does not only a lot of things to equip people with information on people that share their values, but she also trains moms about how do you get involved. She gives you firsthand information on that. So she's doing some great work out there.
And I always worry about quoting a number if I don't have it in front of me, but I think it's like 330,000 moms that she
actually it's 500,000.
It's 500,000 now that she's trained across the country because.
Oh, okay. Maybe that she's trained. She has about 500,000, I think, that are part of her organization.
Well, no. That would be it. My number. That's why I always worry about saying numbers. But if you're not familiar with Moms Across America, y'all, I encourage you to look it up. I'll put it in the feed later because I do think, as we're just saying, it's a really, really important organization. And again, you just want to know, are the people in office representing you? And in that case, your children. That's what Kimberly's done so much with. Patty says voting is a privilege given to us by the people who fought and died for it. But she's saddened today because it seems nowadays we're voting for the lesser of evils. Candidates don't really represent the voters, just like you're saying, they're working for money. And I think that's why we live in new times and we're able to use the digital space to know more about people. And some of the candidates right now that are doing really, really well, no one gave them a chance in anything 6 months ago, but because of social media, because of digital space, and because of the campaigns they're running. So that's why it's important for you to get out there and run for office as well, to consider that, because there's so much we can do. And like with Moms for America, she's got chapters around the country on things that moms can do. And even if you're not a mom of your own biological children, we're all moms of every child in the country, right? In the world for that matter. But I just think it's a really, really good organization. So yeah, I'm glad we mentioned them. And Terry and I were at an event that was hosted by Stacy and David. A couple of weeks ago. Time flies, but it was so good to see the work that they're doing and the impact they're having. And it's all grass level. It's grassroots. I mean, totally organic grassroots level. And the numbers, oh my gosh, I was blown away at what they're doing. For sure, for sure. When you think about voting election day, Terry, what comes to mind for you? What kind of feelings? Just just it's election day. What is that?
It's a privilege. It really is a privilege. I've traveled to 78 countries around the world. And, I think people just don't understand how precious what we have here is. And the leaders that we elect, they really touch our daily lives in so many ways. They make decisions that affect everything. So it's such a privilege and such an incredible blessing that we have the ability to not only get involved, but really make a difference. So that's how I view it.
So agree. I think that travel is one of the best gifts we give ourselves and those
Mhm.
around us. And I've been blessed, not 72 countries, but I've traveled a fair amount. And when you go to other countries and you see the limitations they have because they don't have what we have, then there's a reason the whole world wants to come to America. Uh,
Mm.
I just think that that's such an important part. Another thing that we did with our kids when they were young, we always like to take road trips. I still love road trips and take the back roads. If people saw how so many people, not the East Coast, not the West Coast, or however that is on the camera, but not the coast, but middle America, all those other states, and see how people live, it's not how you live, just like they're not how we live. I mean, you have to see what people's challenges and struggles are and what they're going through to know that we want the best for everyone in our country without a shadow of a doubt. And
That's right.
yeah, so I think that's so. Let's talk a little bit about the book. So I want to read this quote. I just think this quote is just so beautiful here. My granddaughter Sadie Mae drew in the book.
I'm honored.
She was reading. We were teaching her young to get involved. Well, come on here, Debbie. I got it right here. I got the tab. It's not working. Government is not reason. It is not eloquence. It is force. Like fire, it is a dangerous servant and a fearful master.
Mm.
Never for a moment should it be left to irresponsible action. Author unknown. We the people is why the government is why we have what we have, and we have such a responsibility to do that. Running into the fire, why more Christians need to be involved in politics. Now, I want to share something really quick, and this will be really interesting with this. Ann Small, who I adore, and she and I do a lot of the same kinds of things. Um, she does some audios with LinkedIn and gets very deep in Christian faith and prayer, et cetera. I mean, she's really, really good at what she does. I posted something maybe 2 weeks ago on Yaku, who does incredible work
Mm.
across the globe on sex trafficking. Incredible
Mm.
work. He had been on Jesse Waters, so I took a picture of the TV and I put on there something we don't always like to talk about, but it's so important for us to all be conscious and aware because it is huge pandemic in this country and the world as a whole. LinkedIn took it down, which I was very
Mm.
disappointed by. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this one. We'll be interested. So tell us about running into the fire and why you chose to write this book.
Sure. Well, like I said, after I ran for Congress and I took over a super PAC, I just learned a lot about the process. And I'd been in politics since I was a kid, and I thought I knew just about everything there was to know about a lot of the ins and outs of political fundraising and different pieces like that. But it was quite an education. And I realized that there were just so many things that most people just don't know. And so I really felt like God put it on my heart to write this book. The reason why I named it Running into the Fire is because I was talking with a friend of mine who had also run for Congress about the same time that I did. And I asked him, why do you believe Christians shy away from being involved in politics? And he said, well, because they're afraid of it. They think of it as being dirty and corrupt. And I said, yeah, that's what I hear over and over. He said, but what they really need to be doing is thinking of it more like people who are in law enforcement or people who are firefighters, because they're trained to overcome their fears. And instead of running away from the burning building, they run right into it. And I thought, that's exactly it. If we're Christians, we're called to walk in faith, not fear. And, Debbie, when you look at the stats, about 64% of Americans identify as Christians. And yet, according to the Jonathan Project, 41% of Christians in America are not even registered to vote. And out of the ones who are registered to vote in most elections, about half of them don't vote. So that's a major issue. And, Christians make up the majority in this country. That's why I targeted the book specifically towards the body of Christ, because this book is really a call to action to say, hey, this is a time in our country when, quite frankly, we've never been closer to the brink of socialism. And socialism at its core is about replacing God with government and freedom with tyranny. And having seen firsthand what that does to people, we don't ever want that here. And so this is the time for people to engage politically on a level that perhaps they never have, because your country needs you.
Yeah, absolutely. Amen. Amen. Anne was just saying that she's never had anything taken down from LinkedIn, and they allowed me on when Terri and I talked about this. She said, well, maybe if you took out sex and just put trafficking, if it was hashtag sex trafficking, they let me appeal it, but they still didn't let it go back up, even though I had comments on it. People had commented on it, and I just think, I mean, let's just be honest. That's something no one wants for any human in this world to have happen to them, and so. Why it would be controversial is beyond me. But anyway, that was, I'm still waiting back to hear from them again after a second appeal, but we'll see what happens with that. But what I was saying, Ann, was when you're on LinkedIn, you've done the prayer, you've done so much that's really Christian values, and that hasn't been altered at all by LinkedIn. So it's going to be interesting to see if this is, and I hope and pray that's not the case. But I think so much of what you're saying, Terri, is so true, because when in the book, you mentioned Alabama, where it falls on the spectrum of the number of Christians in Alabama, yet it's also, am I stating this correct, the lowest voting? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
Alabama ranks 47th in the nation for political engagement, 4th highest in the nation for corruption, and yet it ties with Mississippi as the number 1 most religious state in the nation. It's the number 1 state that recognizes God. So, I saw that and I just thought, come on, we can do better.
Yeah, there's a correlation, unfortunately. There's a correlation. And I think as a parent, I mean, we raised our kids. Phil and I both were in education as principals for the majority of our careers. And one of the things we always try to teach our kids were a couple things. One was know what your values are. Know what your values are as a family and as individuals, and those will change as they grow. I mean, they might adjust those. Usually they don't too much. But secondly was be open to conversation. Remember how often when I was a kid, you don't talk politics and you don't talk religion at the table. I think we should teach our young people to talk about those things in an open-minded, conversational way, because I love to talk to people who have different viewpoints than I do. I love it. Convince me I'm wrong or show me where I'm missing something. So I think that we should do a better job of teaching our children that, and where you don't get mad at someone because they don't agree with you. I have some dear, dear friends. I mean, dear friends who are, I'm here on the right and I'm talking over here and they're over here on the left. We love each other. We all want the same thing at the end of the day. So I think we could do a better job of that and how we teach people to have conversations. And that's why I love doing this. Anne was saying that you can be afraid and still do the right thing. So many people try to sacrifice something instead of just doing what God is telling them. He wants our obedience. And I think I always call it in the quiet of the night. That's what, to me, when God's talking to me. And I think that we know what we're supposed to be doing, but fear is fear. And people get worried about doing things. That's why I wanted to have this conversation with Terri, because I really wanted people to see that this is a topic we should all be talking about. What is it we want in our country?
Courage breeds courage, so it's like we just need to stop being the so silent majority.
Exactly. And I do think even for those people who don't always speak out loud, when they go into the voting booth, they will vote where they know they will vote with what they believe is right. So that's why I'm never too much of a fan of polls, just because I think people don't always, and I heard something yesterday on a statistic that more conservative people are less likely to be honest in a survey. Less likely. And we know why that is, because you're attacked so much. If you are, both sides would feel like they're attacked. And that's unfortunate, because we should be able to have open conversations, agree to disagree, and try and show one another what those points are. But I said in the beginning, I always say this every time I do a live, but please make sure you go to the networking and that you connect with one another, with Terri and with anyone you're not already connected with. And because it expands our conversation. I encourage you, Anne, you should put in the the comments, because Ann does a great with Wayne Gill audio on Christians and different things in business and stuff. And it's really good. I've tuned in a couple times and listened. So it's really good. So, and put that in the chat so people can have that. And I think this is an example of all the people on this live today. I'm so fortunate and honored that I know the people here today. Sometimes I don't, but this today I do. But there is so much room for growth for everyone. Ann and I basically pretty much do the same thing. But I adore Ann. I respect her. I have such value for her as a friend, but also for the work she does. There's room for everybody. There should be no scarcity mindset, because at the end of the day, we want what's best for everybody. And so however we can achieve that the same way. That's why I was so excited when Terri, when I asked her if she'd come on with me, because I just love this book. It's such an easy read. And I really like the ways you show how to be a smart donor, the training that people don't realize that people aren't always getting, and how you can support and understand what's really going on out there. So, Terri, anything else you want to share with us that I maybe didn't ask you?
Sure. I think one of the biggest things that I really feel like people can do to support others is, just get more involved. It's like anything else. We feel sort of afraid or intimidated of things when they're new to us, but then you start somewhere and you learn by doing. And, it's such a critical time in our country. We need, obviously, with this election now, it's upon us. But gearing up going into 2024, we're going to need a lot of people to really engage. And I think that's something that hopefully this is a call to action that will start to spread. And like I said before, courage breeds courage. There's so many ways that people can encourage others, even if it's just as simple as getting somebody that's never really registered to vote to register. That's a huge thing. But then it may be that it goes all the way up to backing a candidate. And, one of the things that I talk about in the book is when you run for office, it really is almost like starting up a new small business. And small businesses need seed money, and so do candidates. It takes money to do all the things that are required to run for office. So you may be the person who, even if God hasn't put it on your heart to directly serve in government, you may be the person who helps somebody else feel empowered or backed and fully supported enough to step out and be bold and brave. And if you're not there to do that, they may not ever do it. One thing that I really encourage people to pray about is, if God's not calling you to serve in government or to run for office, that's okay. But that doesn't mean you get a pass. We've got to support those who are, because otherwise it's like sending somebody out onto the battlefield all by themselves. And, this is a numbers game at its core. Politics is really about numbers, and
Absolutely.
we have the numbers. We just aren't playing.
Not playing. Patty has a really good question here. Is it just me, or do others notice preachers and clergy telling you who you should vote for rather than the morals and values with which you should make your choice? I think that is an excellent point, Patty. Thoughts on that, Terri?
Sure. I think a lot of pastors have been so scared to get involved, and either they have skirted a lot of things just to try and, be careful about IRS status. That's why I had an entire chapter in the book that I put in there, just basically giving very clear guidance on what you can and cannot do if you're a pastor, if you're a church. But there's a lot that you can do. And, pastor, if he's from the pulpit, as far as with the congregation, can't directly endorse a candidate, but on his own individually, he can. So, I mean, there's a lot of lines there that, people are afraid to cross sometimes, but at a minimum, you can make people aware of core values, issues, and encourage them to just pray about who they're going to vote for and vote their values.
Absolutely. I think that's really one of the biggest issues. Is I really do wonder, have people, not people on this call, obviously on this live today, but sometimes I don't think people know what values they stand for. And when you don't know what you stand for anything and everything. And it's so easy to be, moved by that. I mean, but I think that's a really important part. Let's see, what is Ann saying here? Socialism at its core is replacing God with government. I have not heard that. I've had a lot to learn. Can I have the link to the book, please? Yes, and true transparency here. I believe in that. I think that's the whole point of why we do what we do. And Terry's in the throes of switching her where you can register, order it off her website. So give us a couple of days and we'll let you know how you can get that. I'll come back and we'll share that with everyone who's on this call today. But I would prefer you, I think Terri would prefer you not get it off Amazon right now for some other reasons, but off her website instead. So if you give us a few days, we'll get that out to you. But it's a great read. It's an easy read. It's very, like I said, even Sadie may start reading, but it's a great book and it's just so easy to read and to follow. Like I said, that Alabama thing stuck in my mind. I'm like, that is a really scary stat to think that, the numbers 4 to 47. I mean, my gosh, but there's a correlation to why things are the way they are, I think. Sue says, lots of clergy won't mention it at all. Our church is a polling place, but they did not mention one word about elections today. That's,
Yeah, there's really a lot of fear tied around this issue, and that ties back to the Johnson Amendment and a lot of the things that really, quite frankly, have been very misinterpreted over the years. I think that, a lot of people have just given into fear or have not really clearly understood what you can and cannot do. So that's why I tried to make that real clear in the book. But, more than that, even if your church is not as active as you want, there's a lot of things that you as just one individual can do. Another thing that I really encourage churches to consider embracing is civics training. We've gotten so far away from that. Our schools have stopped doing it. And civics is just basically, it's very politically neutral. The IRS is never going to have an issue with that. It's something that is basically just training about what is good government. And that's something that we really need instilled in our young people, as well as people who are not young anymore. We've just forgotten what that means. And
right.
Good government is the foundation of everything.
Everyone here knows how much I love social media and digital space and what an advocate I am for it. But at the same time, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly, I guess, if you will. So my birthday was last week. I cannot tell you how many people text me on Facebook, on LinkedIn, send happy birthday messages. To me, that's the beautiful side of birthdays. That's why I do birthdays every day, because it's your one day that's your day, right? You came into this earth, and what are you supposed to give and make a difference at? The sad part is that sometimes the negative stuff goes on social media. And Linda McMahon, dear friend and former partner with Stacy and I, she tweeted, go fill up your car, go grocery shopping, look at your 401 and go vote. Thought that was pretty powerful. I had a couple people who trolled me on it, and I thought, you know what, that's okay. That's their right. I think sometimes we get too nervous or too upset about what people are going to say to us. That's their right to say that. That's their right to say that to me. They wanted me probably to react, which I don't care what they said. I mean, it's fine what they say. But I think when you lay it like Linda said, fill up the car, go shopping, look at the 401. Because those are tabletop issues that we all talk about around the kitchen table. I mean, I'm shocked at what food values are. I mean, prices. I mean, holy camole. Yeah. A lot to do. So Terri, I thank you so much. I know you got other interviews today and you got a lot going on with the election and your book and everything. It's a perfect day to talk about it. We're going to talk about some more of this going forward. And I'm just so grateful and so appreciative for you being with me, Terri, and for all the people on the live today. Julie, thank you. Julie, thank you for the birthday wishes. I won't tell you. I think I want to start going back in my age, because when I say my age, I'm like, are you kidding me? You know how when you have to go in and fill out something online, you got to scroll down to your birthday? It takes me like 5 minutes to get to my birthday. I think they should start at 100, whatever that year was, and go that way instead of us having to go down and feel like we're dodo, like we're out of the field. But anyway, Max here says, I want to see what Max said. Truthfully, Christians have a responsibility to be involved. At the bare minimum, we must be faithful stewards, be informed, and vote accordingly. Can That's you right. think that is not anything better than to end this with? Amazing. Perfect. It's perfect. It says it all. So God bless everyone. Thank you all for being here. Terri, thank you again. And everyone have a blessed day. Don't forget, number 1, to vote if you haven't already voted. And number 2, to make sure you connect with everyone that's on the live today. Everyone have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.